Think you don't have enough time to train for a race between work, family, and all the little things that really get thrown at us, whether it's like laundry, kids' activities, social events. It can feel impossible to fit in consistent running. But here's the truth: you can train smarter, set realistic goals, and make progress even with a packed schedule. In this episode, we're breaking down the mindset shifts, planning strategies, and key training adjustments you need to grow as a runner without burning out. Plus, my special guest is going to share how she balances training for ultras while juggling a busy life. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the show, Coach Kat. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. For those that are new to our audience, Coach Kat has multiple run coaching certifications for road running, trail running, triathlon training. She is also a personal trainer, group exercise instructor, engineer by trade, scientist, farmer, Marvel lover, and that's just to name a few of her gifts. She is essentially the Swiss Army knife of our coaching team, and she enjoys when I call her that.
I
She's got
do.
multiple talents.
I love that. That is I carry 2 Swiss Army knives with me too, so I love that.
um, if you can just let us know, because I'm going to put the link to all your previous trainings in the show notes to this, so everyone can get kind of the formalized bio. But why do you think this topic was important for us to really talk about today, from the runners that you work with, who are limited on time, and we often see like certain training mistakes or difficulty with like planning running? Like, why is this important, and why did you want to share this with our healthy runner audience today?
Well, as a run coach, I see a lot of times people have these wonderful ideas about races they wanna run, and I'm always supportive of everybody, but I would find that some runners almost bite off more than they can chew with their schedule, and myself, I realized how busy I am, and we'll get into how busy I am really, and I just felt that it could be helpful for people to look at their schedule before they start training for a race to give them a better idea of what distance or how much the training would involve, if it is a realistic option for them with their time schedule, because that will prevent you from setting yourself up for maybe disappointment.
Yes, yes. And it is so important. And we hate to see people almost like set themselves up to
Yeah.
fail, right? So I do think that this is an important topic to talk about. And we're all like getting time strapped, right? Like, let's be honest, we're like the busy society that we live in, and we juggle multiple jobs and multiple
Yes.
events and multiple everything going on. It seems like everyone is hustle bustle. So let's kind of start off with the mindset, or like the planning bucket. First and foremost, in our 6 steps to growing as a runner framework, if we have limited time and we are in that season of life, let's say, how can we make realistic running goals?
Well, I want to talk about realistic running goals in terms of your race goal. If you are looking to run your first marathon or above, you have to look, in my opinion, at how much time you have to train. If you've trained for 10Ks, you have to look at how much time you have to train if you want to bump them to a half. If you've been running halves, you want to bump them to a marathon. Look at it realistically and kind of take out the like fear of missing out or your ego. How much time do you realistically have to train? And I'm not talking about your weekend runs, because we all can find time usually to run on our weekends. What catches a lot of people, myself included, is your midweek workouts. When you have work, when you have kids, all this stuff. How much time do you realistically have to train during the week? And if you look at that realistically, that can help guide you to decide if right now is the right time to run a marathon, or maybe you hold off until your kids are a little older. They're always going to be marathons. I tell people this all the time. There's always going to be half marathons if you're currently on a 5 or a 10K route, and you're looking to go into the half. There's always going to be races next year. And it may just not be the right time for you may just not have the time to do it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that's a great point that you bring up. And it's funny because my situation is probably like the opposite of most people when, I'm at these travel volleyball
Yeah.
tournaments and she's got to be on the court at like 7:30 a.m. So it like really puts dent in my long runs happening on the
Yeah.
weekends.
Yeah.
So I know
I
those
know.
that are traveling with like sports, or let's say you are a stay-at-home parent and maybe during the week you actually have a little more time versus the weekends. But like you said, I think if someone's working a standard job,
Yeah.
and they don't have a lot of flexibility during their week, then it is like the weekdays that can get really crunched for time, where where are we carving time out for training, whether it is strength training in order to run, or when are we actually doing the running, right? Like making sure that there is that midweek time and that you're realistic about it. And then making sure that we're planning appropriately to say, okay, yes, now I do have time to take that step up from the 10K and train for a half marathon, or take that next step up. It's like a couple steps, I feel like, when you really get into marathon training, because yeah, the time commitment is a huge difference.
Mhm.
It's a huge difference between half marathon training and marathon training in terms of like time commitment, especially for the weekday runs, right? Or weekday strength and running, and sometimes you might need to combine like both on a specific day.
The thing I can hear people asking, well, how do I know how much time I will need to schedule to run, say, a train for a marathon or a half marathon? You can ask any one of our coaches. We have general guidelines. Our coaching program is individual, but generally we could tell you how much time you would need during the week or the weekends to do your first marathon, your first half, maybe your second. We all have a general idea, so you can always ask one of the coaches. Not a huge fan of going online and looking at run plans, but if you're looking at them look under a beginner, just to get a grasp, those are not, I don't like to say that, but if you're trying to figure out, how much time you're going to need, ask one of us. We'll be honest with you and we'll tell you what is a realistic, you know, what how much time you realistically need to train effectively. Because I'm sure that's a question people are going to be asking.
Right. And I would say for me, at minimum, if someone is running a half marathon, at minimum, like you need pretty much 4 days out of that
Yes.
week,
Yes.
not counting the weekends, that is going to at minimum 30 minutes, 4 days a week, whether it's strength or running. And definitely as you go halfway through that training, it's going to be longer than that. So anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, I would say. 30 minutes would be like the bare minimum, I would say, for half marathon training. And if you're marathon training, like, yes, it is going to be pretty much an hour. I would say at least 4 days a week. Would you agree with that?
I would at a minimum. And you also have to look in, so people are like, oh, okay, I have this, but you also have to look into mundane stuff. When are you going to get your laundry done? When are you going to clean your house? Are you going to be training in the summer and you have family events on the weekends? I'm going to talk about what you may have to give up to train, as we go on, but you also have to factor in realistically, how much time it takes to do laundry, if you mow the lawn, you know, all these things people don't think about when they want to do their run plan. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, I have a 3 hour run or a 20 miler, but I have to mow the lawn. I have to go grocery shopping. I have to do laundry. So you're not necessarily going to have that quality run. You're going to be stressed for time. So take that into consideration when you decide on maybe a race distance.
That's so funny that you mentioned mowing the lawn because I used to love mowing my lawn, Cat. Like when I first became a homeowner, I was like that person
Yeah,
that
I
like,
know. Me too.
had the pristine lawn.
Uh-huh.
I was out
I'm
there
a
like
farmer.
almost literally every day. But
Yeah.
to mow the lawn, it did take me probably, I would say, like an hour and 20 minutes. And then
Yeah.
when I started becoming a runner in my lower 30s there, and I was training for half marathons. That is when I strategically got a tractor. So I took like the hour and 20 minutes where it turned it into like 30 minutes. And
I know.
then as I continued in my marathon journey, I just went all in and have someone else doing my lawn now. So
It's
because I don't have time for it.
it's insane. You forget about these little things that really, when I'm talking about time management and race planning, just adds stress to people's lives. So think about realistically how much time you have before you decide on how what your run should be or your race.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great point. And, what will we need to give up if we do have limited time?
I don't
Something's got to give, right?
Yes, I don't like to say give up because you're replacing it with running. And you're not you're giving up something, but you're kind of replacing it with
You're
running. But
prioritizing.
yes. And what you can give up potentially if you work all day, you have to do your run at night, you may give up TV time. You know that there's certain shows I watch I don't like to miss. Hence treadmill and TV, but that's another story. But you may have to give up happy hour with your friends. You may have to give up going out on date night potentially. I'm not saying to do that. I don't want any marriage people yelling at me, but these are things that you may have to give up extra time with your kids, sleeping in late, making breakfast for them on the weekends. If you love having breakfast, well, if you have a long run, bringing them you have to realize that you may not be able to do that to the extent if you're training for those longer distance races. And it may not even be you don't have time. It may just be you're fatigued and you just don't want to go out. You don't want to go out to dinner. You just want to come home, sit down on that one night you have free and do nothing. But your family isn't going to understand. They're going to be like, well, you have nothing to do. You don't have a run. You don't have this. Let's go out to dinner. No, I want to sit here and watch TV. So there's a lot of stuff, personal, but there's a lot of stuff that you might have to not give up, but not have for a couple of months if you're training for, I'm going to say marathon usually and greater, but even half. Um, and it may not be due to time. It may just be you're exhausted and you just need that time to sit down instead of doing other stuff with the family.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to all of that. And it is one of those things that I love having a Scotty family breakfast on the weekends.
Yep.
And we just came off a stretch of like 4 straight volleyball weekends that we were away. And that was at the Boston Run Show. So I was away for kind of, business. And yeah, last weekend was the first time that we were able to have that breakfast on a Sunday, but it never happens on a Saturday because I do my long runs on Saturday. So I come back and I have breakfast at like 12 o'clock and I'm making my omelet. I got my bagel. I got
I
everything.
know.
And,
People
everyone's already on
life.
like lunch.
Yeah, I know. Bacon, it's a weird thing to be a runner.
It is. It is.
It really is.
Um, yeah. What do you feel in terms of your experience with needing to give things up when we are, during those peaks of training, when we're feeling fatigued? Are there like certain things that you've had to give up?
Most definitely. Um, my schedule is insane, and some people know this. I'll give you. I don't usually give out my entire life, but I'm at work at 5:30 in the morning. I work at my first job as an engineer until 2. I then go to the YMCA. I'm there until 6:30, sometimes 7, teaching, working Monday. This is Monday through Friday. Then I come home. I have client calls. I have podcasts. Then I have to do my workout. On the Saturdays, I work on a farm all day from 8 to 5. So I just want people to know I am maxed out busyness. So what I've given up is sanity actually, is, that was a joke, guys, but I've given up sometimes when I come home and after, maybe client calls, I don't I give up sitting on the couch, which sounds simple, and watching TV. I can watch the TV, but I'm on the treadmill. Or I give up going out sometimes with friends on a Friday night. I'm like, I just can't. I'm too tired. Or, you that's personally what I've given up, everybody is very different. I I've given up. I don't have children, but I have 2 nieces, and I've given up, which bothers me sometimes, their softball games. I didn't get to see as many softball games because I just couldn't get to it. I had to do a run when they were doing a softball game. Um, a lot, and that's pretty much a lot of what I had to give up. Um, I'm not a huge social person to go out anyway, but if there was 1 or 2 times, it's something that y y you know, when I get the downtime, I appreciate.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely, the one thing that I could clearly say that I've given up is watching sports. I used to watch a lot of sports and I used to be like a huge Yankee fan. I used to almost watch like every game. Um, I literally don't watch sports anymore. That's the thing I've given up and I'm like okay with that. Because I know that I'm spending my time, either doing my passion, either working, in the business or taking care of my health and trying to improve in my running journey and or recover from that or spend quality time with my family, right? Like all those things are going to come first
Yeah,
before I like watch sports that when you think about it, like whether the team wins or not is not
I
going to
know.
change my life, right?
I
But that was like a hobby, I guess, that I used to like to do for entertainment purposes, right?
Puzzles. I used to love to do puzzles. I haven't had time to do a puzzle.
Hmm.
I used to do puzzles all the time. And I will give a shout out to all spouses or significant others. You do need to have an understanding significant other while you're training
Right.
because you need to make sure that they understand that this is temporary-ish, but I want to give a shout out to people who, you may not realize that your spouse is also training with you, but in a very different way. They are giving up stuff, or maybe they're picking up, I don't want to say slack, but maybe they're picking up the kids instead of you. Maybe they're cleaning the house or laundry instead of you. Maybe they're missing out on a date night because of your running schedule. So just keep that in mind, your significant other, that they are also, training in a sense with you.
I feel like you've been talking to my wife.
No, but I have to give the shout out to all. I just flashed through my head of all the coaches,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm like, yeah. So
Yes, no, it's true. It's
yeah,
true, and I'll be the first to admit it. Like, yes, my wife does pick up a lot of the slack.
yep,
And I'm by no means like an absentee dad. I go to all their games. I never miss any of their games and all of that. But yeah, she's doing more of the drop offs and
yeah,
pickups and
yep,
practices and all of that stuff. But the one thing that I could say, and it's a way that if all of this and we don't want this to come across as like a negative
yeah.
episode and like
No,
running is
it's
like taking away your life because I found different ways, right, to spend quality time with my wife where hey, yeah, after a long run I'm really actually doubling down on recovery now because I am actually vegging out like on the couch and we'll watch a program together or we'll watch movies together and I'm like in and out of either my Normatec boots or I got like my toe splays on so my feet are recovering. Like
yep,
I'm actually like kicking up my feet. So I'm like really making sure I recover, I'm moving around,
yep.
and I'm not stressed out, right? So you're allowing your body to really heal in a way. So it just might look different than maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
When we were
it's not
younger, we'd be like going out and about a lot, right, to different
that's more
stores and doing a lot of activities on the weekends when we were younger homeowners or parents and than we are now. So how do we actually um, adjust expectations when we have limited time. So, how do we adjust those expectations? So let's say our time is limited. We're in that season of life. How's the best way to adjust those expectations so they're realistic?
Um, y- you want to realize that if you push yourself too much in terms of your training, and I'm not meaning speed work or distance, I don't mean that, but if you push yourself to do too many workouts, something's going to end up giving. And, you know, you may just get tired. You may start skipping workouts. You may cut your workouts down, which is okay. If you're really tired, you need an extra rest day. I tell my runners, take that extra rest day. Listen to your body. Don't push
Yeah.
through it. But if it becomes a chronic situation where every week you're not being able to get one or two workouts in, your performance on your race is going to not be what you want, and you will be prone, to maybe more injuries if you're not doing the strength training. A lot of runners tend to say, I'll do the runs but skip the strength training. And that's just the nature of runners. But
Hmm.
if you don't have the time to do the strength training, that is a huge part of your training. I don't say run training. I say, you know, race training, which includes those strength training and the recovery. And if you don't have time for that, or you start skipping them because you just are too tired or you don't have the time, your performance is going to suffer. And you may even mentally, you're not going to be in the right mindset. You're going to be discouraged. You're going to be like, why can't I do this? Why am I not getting faster? Why is this happening? Because you basically you're pushing yourself too much in terms of time management.
Right. And you can't expect to run your fastest, get
Right.
that PR, or run your longest distance ever if you are just stretching yourself way too
Yes.
thin. Right.
Yes.
And you just don't have time. And so it is about being realistic in terms
Yes.
of like this season of life for you. Right.
Exactly.
And I actually just had this conversation before we hopped on here with an athlete of mine who she's getting ready for her goal race, her goal half marathon, and she's been like crushing her training. I've been working with this athlete for over a year now. She's just doing amazing things, and I'm so proud of her. But she did ask me, she said, okay, if I get this time, is that really reflective of what I should be able to do in shaving off like 3 minutes off her half marathon time in the matter of like 9 months? And this is someone who, started working with me because she had hip pain that she couldn't run through. And we've been building up. And now she's gone through 3 consecutive training cycles, totally pain free, getting better with each one. Had some bad weather circumstances, really hot, humid conditions for a couple of races. But she's like, you know, is that a good thing? Essentially, like trying to measure the outcome of the race to her training. But I needed to remind her that she was going through a very busy workload cycle. She's an attorney and she had like huge amount of workload really the past 2 months. And we've had the conversation multiple times on our calls about how we're going to actually balance this all with recovery because she's doing some really hard speed work and in her long runs, and we need the body to recover. So I kind of reminded her of that with what she's been balancing with the workload. So, realistically, like what are we looking for this race performance? And I do think that she's going to have a breakout performance, but like we're not expecting to get a PR from 8 years ago, right, when she was like 31, because it's just not realistic, right? And
Yes.
I think that's what you're speaking to, is about being realistic based upon the training. What have you been able to get in? How consistent were you? And then everything else that you're juggling. And if you're juggling a lot, like, yeah, there are just things that we need to do, right? And like that's how I always look at it with when I had my busy seasons when I was, teaching and semesters, I would literally plan my races around my semesters, either set up my race in the beginning of the semester before the semester chaos and,
Yeah.
grading and midterms and finals and projects and meetings and all that stuff picked up. I would always schedule my race in the beginning of a semester, or with my girls, like busy travel volleyball season. It was like, yes, I did not race between January and June essentially, because it just didn't make sense with, training. So, think about that when you are planning. Kind of goes back to the planning point we talked about earlier, but then also be
And the weather.
realistic about it. Like for myself right now, I'm realistic. I'm actually running my first race on Sunday since literally last June. And for
Mm.
those that have been following along, you did know that I didn't run for 6 weeks for the first time in my adult onset running journey last summer, because I had a partial tear in my plantar fascia. Right. So I was literally not running in July, August, started to my return to run in September, and I didn't race all fall because I was returning to run, building up a base, building the foundation. And so this is my first race, coming in March here. So I'm realistic. Like, I'm not expecting to do better than I did at my 5K last spring. Um,
And
so it's,
surprise,
yeah,
there was a race available. You waited and there was a race available to
right.
talk.
I didn't force the issue, is what you're saying, and try to race when, like, my body wasn't ready, or timing wise it wasn't ready for me. Like
Well,
you
that
said before, the
at the
races aren't going
beginning.
anywhere.
Yeah, there's always gonna that's why I said that. There's always gonna be a race.
Right.
So if this cycle, doesn't work for you, if you don't like running in the winter or you don't like snow, we all know my opinion on this. For those who don't, I love the winter. I love the snow. The colder, the better. But if you don't like that, then don't realistically expect to do your best training for a spring marathon if you live in a cold weather climate. If don't expect to do your best marathon if you don't like the cold, or you're not going to maybe be able to be as effective because you just don't want it's hard for you to train. So maybe consider that if you do have a spring marathon but you haven't had a great weather winter.
Right.
So that's also stuff to take into account, not just with time, but timing of the seasons. I mean, unfortunately, I hate the heat, and there's really not many options for me, but to train. But just keep that in mind too. That could be part of time management, is the timing of your seasons, and there will always be races. I cannot emphasize enough that there will
Right.
always be a race out there for you.
Yep. Yeah, it's so true. And I think we need to be comfortable with that. And sometimes we can get race happy. And I do find this a little bit more in our novice runners where, because yeah, it's almost like it's like an addiction, or you get like
Yeah,
that,
FOMO.
boost of energy, and it's like adrenaline rush of a race, and you're like, I want to do more races because I get
Yeah.
an adrenaline rush, and I like the crowds, and I like being surrounded by others, and
Ugh. I just
it's,
cringe. But yes.
but yeah, we do need to be mindful, is what you're
Yes.
saying with timing. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, what are some common training mistakes runners make who are on limited time?
Okay, this I see all the time. And I mentioned one earlier. They tend to cut out what they don't like or they don't want to do, which seems to be strength for a lot of runners. I don't know. I like my
Hmm.
strength. I'm not, when I do my strength, I don't normally like, it's a lot, it seems easier to me than running, but that's just me. So they skip stuff. They'll skip their strength. Or if you are recovering from an injury, and say some of my clients, I give them a rehab program that they have to do every day in order to get their injury better. If they skip that, or they skip the strength, or they start skipping a run here or there and saying, I'm going to, instead of doing one of my runs in midweek, I'm going to do it on a Saturday and then my long run on a Sunday. Now, that you start messing up the sequence of your runs. You want to pack everything you can on the weekend. So maybe you're doing a run Saturday, Sunday, a strength on Saturday, a strength on Sunday, because you can't get to it during the middle of the week. And that is not going to benefit you, because what I tell people, and I'm going to say there are some training plans where you do need to do back-to-back runs. My ultras are one of them, but for the majority of people, you don't need to do back-to-back long runs. And you don't necessarily need to do a strength on a long run. I work with clients with that, but you don't want to think that the long run is the most important run of your cycle. It is not. I cannot stress this enough. The cumulative mileage that you put on is just as important as that one long run. And people tend to think that that long run is what's going to make or break a training plan. It is not. You know, it is the day in and day out consistency of sticking to your plan that is going to pay the dividends. Running when you're not in a race, your training cycle is not, I'm going to say sexy, it's not fun, it's ugly, it's sweaty, it's gross, but it has to be done if you want to be successful in your race. So thinking that you can skip a run or a strength during the week because, oh, I have my long run on the weekend, that'll be enough, it might get you there, but your performance is going to suffer. And the cumulative mileage, there's a reason those 3 mile runs are just as important as, say, an 18-mile run from a physiological standpoint. Psychologically, maybe not. But from when I'm training a plan, that cumulative mileage, those short runs are just as important, and that strength is just as important as that long run. And that's a common training mistake I do see when people start running out of time. They start skipping their shorter runs. And I do want to say this is not, again, if you're tired, you need a rest day, skip it. I don't mean this is never take a extra rest day. Do that. But if it becomes consistent week after week, that's when you're going to start seeing some issues.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, we talked about this on our recent episode with Coach Latoya for half marathon training that yes, the long run is key for half marathon and marathon distances in order to actually get to the finish line. But you bring up a great point that if you start taking away short runs because you don't value them as much, then I see it from two standpoints. What we're doing is we're taking away the frequency of running that we're doing throughout the week, which whenever we decrease frequency, we're now decreasing our body's ability to adapt to demands of running, right? So if you are on a 4-day plan and you keep skipping your short run throughout the week, now you're only down to 3. 3 days, in my mind, it doesn't cut it if we are training anything more than a 10K distance a week in order to allow our bodies to adapt to the demands of running to keep us healthy and prevent injuries from occurring. And then the other thing I see is if you are doing speed work,
Mm-hmm.
then you're literally skipping a recovery run
Yes.
essentially. And now all of the runs you're doing are either higher quality, whether it's the long run, maybe you're doing like a medium long run during the week and a speed day. And because those are most fun, you're only doing those and you're not doing the 3 miler that's
Yes,
not sexy. And,
exactly.
but see, now you're never actually running at a recovery pace that's allowing your body to recover. And so, yeah, there's issues with that. I can see that. And I see a lot of injured runners who I work with who basically come when we work out their schedule on their onboarding call. We have this conversation and we lay it out, right? Like Monday through Sunday. Okay, how much time do you have in your day? What do your days look like? I always start out, usually the conversation starts with, what, days do you usually like to get your long runs in, right? Like what day have you done that traditionally? And then the next day I go to is like, when, has been the best day to be a rest
Rest
recovery?
day.
Is it
Yeah.
like on the weekends where you and the spouse like to
Yeah,
sleep in, right?
exactly.
Or are
We
you
ask the same
super
questions.
busy during, a work day is like Monday? Are you always slammed at work? You have all these meetings and it's just easier for you to get in the office earlier or start your work day earlier because then it just decreases your stress levels, right? So it usually depends. So then we schedule that, right? You got your rest recovery day you're not doing strength, day you're not running, and then we got your long run. And then we need to go to other days of the week. But I've seen a lot of runners who come to me with these injuries. When we have this conversation, they're like, well, I'm used to doing my long run on Saturdays. And then there's this really great class that I love to do at the gym. So I usually start my day going to that 7 a.m. class, and then I'll do my run after. And then I'll do this yoga class at 5 p.m. So they stack everything in
Everything.
Saturday and a Sunday,
Yes.
because that's the only days of the week that they can actually go to classes at the gym.
Mhm.
And then they wind up putting their long runs on the weekends. And so now we're like stacking everything. They're doing 2 runs on these 2 days, and then they're doing a strength session. Then they're doing like 2 gym classes. So
Yeah.
like that's too much load in a small amount of time, where the body is going to have like too much stress too soon, and you wind up getting overuse injuries, right? So your Achilles is going to start bothering you, or your IT band is going to start bothering you. It's because you're doing too much in a small amount of time. So we do need to spread out some of that. So yeah, I do see that
We're
as
gonna
like a
talk about that
common
too.
training
Yes.
mistake. Yeah. Any others?
Um, not not really. We covered it, skipping the ones because they're not sexy or they're not fun. But training isn't always fun.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of, yeah, I like to call them, we all have those runs that don't feel great. And you just say, okay, like everyone has them. And we just like short term memory, like Dory from like Finding Nemo. Like, it's just whatever, it's done, completed. You were consistent, you got it done, move on. Like, don't give it a thought. Don't, ponder. Don't be like, what does that mean for my race? Because I did this random 4 mile run during the week and I felt like crap. My legs felt heavy. I felt like it was a
Yeah.
slog fest.
Mhm.
Right. Like we all have those runs, and sometimes they happen on a long run. Sometimes they happen on a speed. It's just like a dud. Just move on. Yeah. Keep moving forward. All right. So, what are some ways that we can manage training or workouts with limited time? What are some suggestions you have, Coach Cat?
Now, this is my suggestion, and I do it on my schedule because I really am busy. Like, I literally am out of the house at 5:30 in the morning. I get back at 6:30 at night, and none of that involves running. Saturdays, like I said, I go to the farm for most of the days. I also take horseback lessons. So all of that factors. The only way I can train, and I find that if you're limited for time, is by doing a time based plan versus distance based plan. And I've mentioned this in other, I think I mentioned it in the cross training podcast a little bit, but there's something to be said for my plan. I look at what I have to do. Okay, I have a 45-minute bike ride. All right. All I need to do is carve out 45 minutes of the day. All right, I have an hour aerobic run. All I need to do is find an hour in the day. And my whole plan is all time based. So I know exactly how much time I need to dedicate to this running training plan. And I make sure that the days I don't have a lot of time are my shorter workouts, but they may not be easier workouts, but the time is less, like a 45-minute instead of a maybe 90-minute. And I train for ultras, so I'm going beyond the marathon distance. I'm doing more time-based ultras, trail ultras. So my training plan looks very different in terms of the number of days. I literally am training 6 days a week because I spread out the mileage over 6 days a week. It works because it's accumulative. The longer your race is, the more time you have to train. But I also work full time. I have all this stuff. So for me, the best way to do that, and for a lot of time crunched people, if you can do a time based training plan, you know, it is the way to go. And I know I hear a lot of people who say, well, you know, if you want to see those 18, 20 milers, okay, but you're going to be out there for a lot longer than a 3 hour run potentially. And physiologically, you don't really have that many gains after 3.5 hours of running straight. But psychologically, you might, if you build that confidence. But the time based, if you are strapped for time, you can still, believe it or not, train for these huge races. And I'm doing a lot more than marathon distance and time wise, 24-hour races. you train by time rather than distance. And that really does help with your time management skills, because all I need to do, I look at my schedule. This is all I need out of the day. I can find 45 minutes to do this bike ride. I can find an hour to do this run. Whereas if you have a 6 miler, depending on your pace, you can be really fast. You could do it in 45, 50 minutes, or you could do it in an hour and a half. So you don't know how long it's going to take you, to do a distance run. An 18 miler maybe take you 3 hours, maybe takes you 5, 6 hours, depending on the day, the weather, how you feel. So it, by knowing how much time I need to be out there or training, it alleviates any kind of stress on me that I have to finish this by a certain time. I know if I'm running at 7 and I have a 4 hour, 3 hour run, I'll be done by 11. Granted, I have the driving, but I know that's how long I'll have. Not if I have a 20 miler, I may not get back till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, time based is definitely something I've embraced in the last couple of years. My coach has given me a lot of time based runs, and I find that it actually decreases anxiety levels before a
It
run
does.
when you are time crunched and you're rushing around. Because, like you said, you look at the training plan, it's like, oh, okay, I got a whatever 50-minute run, hour run, as opposed to, okay, I got to get in 6 miles. So for me, that's like maybe running at, I'm making sure that I'm maintaining my pace to get it
Correct.
in within an hour. Whereas if my body really needed to go a little slower that day, it's going to go slower because I'm still just running the hour. I'm not trying to run 6 miles. Right. So for me, it kind of decreases almost a little pressure and anxiety, especially when you're like rushing around and you are time strapped. Um, and then even speed work too, I find it a lot more approachable to do speed work
Yeah,
from time based as opposed to mileage based.
exactly.
To do
Tempo run.
repeat miles or to do 2 or 3 miles at tempo pace
Uh,
sounds like daunting,
it.
right?
Thank
Versus,
you.
hey, running for 5 minutes or
Yes,
6 minutes at a faster pace. And yeah, it's been a
my.
lot more approachable to me.
I'll even read my workouts, and I'm still training for ultras. But my coach has me, you know, my long run or a speed workout might be 10 to 15 minutes of an easy pace, but then six by like 6 minutes of RPE tempo pace comfortably hard, followed by 2 minutes recovery. And it's
Hmm.
so much easier psychologically for me than to say I have to maintain a tempo pace for 2 miles, even though so time based for speed work, I do love it.
Hmm.
For me, I set my timer. I have my watch. It beeps. I can see the countdown. I'm like, cool. I have
Right.
4 minutes left at this pace. I can hold this for 4 more minutes. Whereas if I say I have to hold this for a half mile, which it may be 4 minutes, maybe a half mile, but for me, the time based is so much
I
easier.
agree. I agree. If you guys are listening to this and you've struggled to like speed work in the past
Yes.
because it's just
Talk
gotten
to
in
me.
your head, or yeah, like going by time based, it's been a huge game changer for me where you feel like you could just hold that pace for you like,
Yes.
and you know what it feels like. Like, okay, I know what 5 minutes feels like. I know what 4 minutes, 3 minutes, right? 1 minute. Like this morning, I had some faster interval stuff
Mhm.
with like 1 minute with 1 minute rest.
Yes.
And I didn't even need to look at my watch because I'm like, I know what 1 minute feels like
Exactly.
pushing for 1 minute.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Yes, and it's you can it is really, for me, I hated speed work. I actually did hate speed work. I don't do I do speed work about once a week depending on my plan, because I am more endurance based right now and distance mileage, but that speed work is quality. And I also do speed work on the bike, but just by time based, it alleviates so much more stress. I actually feel faster by
Hmm.
doing it by time than trying to maintain a tempo pace that for me was so challenging
Right. Right.
for a mile.
Yeah. No, I agree. Any other tips or tricks that you would give to your athletes to kind of manage training when they are limited on time?
plan it out. This is
Mhm.
where I have a paper calendar.
Schedule it out. Yeah, plan it, write it
Schedule it
down.
out. If you have a coach, the coach will do it for you, but if you don't, look at your schedule. Say, "Okay, I have, like, Wednesdays, the middle of the week. I have no time. I don't get home till 9 o'clock at night." Okay, then that's your rest day. Schedule it out on paper so that you can see it.
Mhm. Yeah. Make it visual. And yeah,
Yes.
and I even like to journal, like, first thing in the morning when I wake up, and
Mhm,
I kind of journal out, okay, look at my calendar. Even though it is on like Google Calendar,
mhm.
it's helpful for me to write it down as well. And I kind of planning out, right, the day, and kind of time blocking can be helpful and can keep you accountable to yourself. If you're not working with a coach who is going to keep you accountable, because they're going to see if you got in that strength or that run on your calendar. But yeah, I think planning is key. Honestly, whenever I've been really time strapped, it is, you have to plan, right, and be ready for it, and just, as opposed to just letting the day take,
Yes.
like, the day is in charge of you. Like, you're able to have a say, right? And if your goal is to, whatever running goal you have, like, you have to be consistent, like Coach Kat said. So that is
And a
super important.
coach takes uh, and a coach takes that out of it. That's what a lot of my clients like, is that I plan their runs so they don't have to think about it. You just look at the week. Okay, this is what I'm doing this week. You know, that's also something that's a benefit to having it planned out for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just decreases the cognitive load, and you're not
Yes.
having
We're all for
to
that.
guess. And absolutely, yeah, that's why I will never not work with a coach ever again.
Exactly. I I
Even though
I
I could
know.
program, we could program our
I
own,
I
but
could,
it
but
just, yeah, it's
no,
not
I
worth
don't
it.
wanna have to program my own. I I
Exactly,
I don't have I program enough people. I don't wanna think about mine.
exactly. Yeah,
Coach, you do it for me.
and then we have our own blind spots too, right? And
Yes.
everyone, so yeah,
Yes.
no, it's definitely beneficial. So if you could change one thing about the misconception of training with limited time, what would that be?
It is possible. It is possible to train with limited time, but you have to be and set realistic goals. You can't expect to train for a marathon if you can only train 2 to 3 days a week total. You can't expect to maybe PR if you can finish a race, but maybe you won't PR if you don't put the time in. No matter what, you have to put the time in order to be successful. There's no shortcut. There is absolutely no shortcut. There's maybe cheat codes if you're a video game person, and I don't mean cheat codes by you're cheating yourself, but by doing a time versus distance, or scheduling a little different. But you have to put the work in order to get those results. There's no way around it. The coach cannot run for you. So if you need to look at it realistically, and if you have the time, go for it. If you're thinking you're a little short on time, talk to somebody who may be able to help you. Like I said, my schedule is insane and I'm training for ultras, but it's tough. So you want to be realistic with your goals. And you can train, but you have to go in with your eyes wide open.
I love it. It is possible, guys. So
It is. It's
hopefully,
100% possible.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
hopefully, some of
trust
this
me.
conversation today was helpful for you to think about how you can optimize your training, even if you're time strapped. And if you want to hear more from Coach Kat about some of the previous trainings that she's done, I will leave the link in the show notes to get insights such as, like, running safety, cross training, how to start running as a beginner, how to do treadmill runs, how to run in cold weather months, marathon mindset, how to do a
I have
tempo run. Like we said, she's the Swiss Army knife
Swiss
of the
Army knife.
team, as you could
That's
tell
my
by those
tagline.
topics. And now,
I love my tagline. I love Swiss Army knife. And I'm always learning. And the one thing I will say as a parting, because I do like to talk, is I would never give a client something that I myself wouldn't do. So
Absolutely.
And I will not talk about something unless I'm 100 that I've done it or it's from my experience. So everything I'm talking about in any of my podcasts is from my own experience. I would never, tell somebody to do something if I couldn't do it. And I don't mean paces, because there's some fast people out there. I'm never going to be able to do what Coach Lou can do in paces. Just putting that out there. But I
Yeah.
wanted to just say that.
Absolutely. And if you guys are, time strapped and you're like, you know what? I never even thought about, having a coach help me, and you want to learn more about our coaching team and working with Coach Kat, or she mentioned Coach Lou, and
Yes.
you want to learn a little bit more about working with our team, where we can structure exactly what to do from a strength standpoint, run standpoint, nutrition needs, so you can meet your goals even if you're time strapped. Then just learn more about our coaching program by going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. And Coach Kat, thank you so much for coming on,
Yeah.
as always, to educate our Healthy Runner community. It's always great to see you.
It's great. I love talking. I love talking to my community, to the community. I really do.
I know this is a great conversation, and thank you guys for listening to it. Whether you're watching on the Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel or listening on the pod, maybe you're getting a run. Hopefully, you're crushing your run right now, enjoying it. Hopefully, we kept you company. Maybe it wasn't one of those dud runs. Like maybe you had the best run ever. If you did, let us know.
Yeah,
Um,
give us a shout out.
Yes, please. And if you enjoyed this training, I'm sure you will definitely love the next training on cross training tips with Coach Kat that you can do as a runner. So if you're listening to this on the pod, queue up episode 254 on the Healthy Runner podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube channel, just click the video that I have for you next. As always, let's continue to grow a strong mind, strong body, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.